Hello and welcome to Honey Badger Radio number 31, Men's Mental Health. Today we're going to have sort of a subtopic of men's mental health, gay men's mental health. And incidentally, when we talk about men's mental health, we are also talking about gay men's mental health because gay men are men. We're also talking about trans men's mental health because trans men are men. We're also talking about bisexual men's mental health because bisexual men are men. So any feminists who are listening and saying we exclude trans, straight, bi men, or trans, gay, bi men when we talk about men's mental health, we are not actually doing that. If you listen to the episode on men's mental health that we did about 2 weeks ago on November 5th, you would have heard me read a letter from a young gay man who was experiencing suicidal thoughts. I titled him after his initials, TD. And on that episode, I asked if anybody who was experiencing the same thing that TD was experiencing, because he expressed a sense of isolation from both the straight and gay communities, if you would write in support for TD in the situation that he was in. And we got pretty much an overwhelming amount of mail directed towards TD and to talk about the situation, to express that men, felt similarly and had experienced many of the same things. And luckily today, TD got back to me. Really appreciate him doing so. I was waiting for this mail for a long time, and this is what he had to say. Hi, Allison, or whoever might get this. This is the gay man whose letter you read during your previous men's health talk. I'm sorry I never got back to you about the letters of support, but I'm still a bit hesitant reaching out to others on this issue. My first email was spurred on by a touch of the maker's mark, I must confess. I just wanted to say thank you for taking the time to read my letter and deciding it was important enough for others to hear. Just looking through the comments the video helped me out immensely and let me know that I might not be the only person out there who has this stuff rattling around in their heads. I'm currently looking for some therapeutic options for myself, though the area I live in, Kentucky, is thwarting my efforts for the most part. Most therapists that I think might be able to help with my specific issues live far outside the rural area I currently live at. Until then, I suppose I can keep watching your videos. It's done quite a bit to help my sanity and help me not become the kind of person I'm terrified of becoming. Thank you again for sharing my letter, and if you'd like to share it again, thank you to everyone who commented with words of support. And please, if you're having the same issues, talk about it, even if it has to be a drunken email. So once again, thank you, TD, for getting back to me about this. It was a relief to hear back from you. And I want to say you got quite a lot of support, and we will be going through the support that TD got. We're not going. First, we can actually, Brian, are you ready? Do you want to
Yes. Do you want me to do the follow-up?
Yes. Yeah, I'm going to get Brian to do the follow-up because that will mean that there's less mispronunciation and incomprehensible butchering of English from somebody who's supposed to be a native English speaker, but still.
Well, I didn't catch any glaring errors, so. But all right. So there was an update received. Hi, Allison, or whomever might get this.
No, wait, Brian, I just read that. Is
that what you read? Wait, where's
the? No, just go down to just support. Once again, it would never be an episode of Honey Badger Radio without this. All right.
I'll do this support.
You guys had one job. One job.
Jeez. Okay.
Good thing I don't have any jobs.
Good hair, May writes, Hey, Badgers. I'd like to reach out to that person whose message you read on the show. I identified a lot with it given that I'm also one of those horrid straight-passing gays. I just moved to a new town for college after dropping out of my previous one this past month, and adapting hasn't been easy. I'm living alone for the first time, and because I haven't made any friends going day in and day out with only the bare minimum human interaction is proving to be quite difficult. So that was one.
Yes.
Time, you want me to keep going?
Yeah, keep going.
Okay. Timehead writes, Hey, Badgers. TD's letter in the suicide show really resonated with me. To my surprise, many of your listeners have also felt the same way. I find it comforting that there are men out there that I could have friendships and relationships with. I believe we all need to reach out more, so feel free to pass this email on to him. I hope for a follow-up with him, and keep up the great work. All right, thank you, Time Head. Next, Terrence writes, I've been very lucky. When I first came out, I tried desperately to fit in with the local gay scene, but it was largely impossible for me. I just don't have much in common with them besides the obvious. In general, I find most of the other gays shallow and off-putting. Likewise, I don't fit in with your manly men either. Again, it all came down to shared interests. As it happened, I was able to make a friend that invited me to give tabletop RPGs a try. Around the same time as I needed an escape, I tossed myself deeply into the hobby. It was then that I really found that missing piece, a place to belong where even if you don't really fit in anywhere else, there was a vast mob of similar misfits who would examine you for your faults and merits and judge you based not on a stereotype, but who you are. It was a long time before I really felt comfortable in my own skin, but the local game store is where I made my best friends, had my best times, and even found my boyfriend of 2 years. Hang in there, TD. Time and effort is all it takes, and you will find your place and all the wonderful things that reside there. Well, thank you, Terrence. That's very well said. Luke writes, Hey, Allison. I was listening to the Crimea River show, and I felt compelled to message about TD. I'm in a very similar position. I've never had a relationship or a real sexual experience, and I think it's due to similar reasons, like being more straight acting and not fitting into a stereotype. I've also suffered with depression and suicide attempts, although I'm a lot better now. I'd love to be able to maybe talk to TD perhaps through Skype. As Rachel said, it's better to hear a voice than see it typed. Let me know if he gets back to you. Thanks for your time, and thanks for signing Zetospora. Luke. Thank you, Luke. Kevin writes, I just wanted to thank Allison for her call to gay guys who find it hard to fit into society. It's such a fucking problem. I'm a 28-year-old gay guy, and unlike your writer, I'm not straight acting. My situation is actually pretty different and a lot easier than the writer's because I've never felt particularly unaccepted by gay society, and from the outside, it would appear that I fit right in, with lots of gay friends. Inside, however, I feel as though my social life consists of going out with people who share none of my interests to places I don't like that play awful music for 13-year-old girls and getting very drunk out of necessity. I couldn't count the number of times I've cried myself to sleep after a night out that my friends would have, though I'd enjoyed. What?
Thought I'd enjoyed.
Oh,
Would
yes.
have thought.
Yeah, I see it's a misspelling. I'm 28 and have had sex with 3 people in my life, despite being considered good-looking and having a normal sex drive, and have no idea why. I just think that if you're a nerdy gay guy, even if you look and act the part, it can be really fucking hard to relate. I'm not looking for sympathy or to have my letter read out or anything. I just wanted to respond to Allison's call-out, because I know there are so many of us out there, and I really think you guys should do a show about it. Your show has helped me so much, and I shit myself laughing every time Allison and Karen hurl abuse at each other. Thanks, Kevin.
Oh my fucking god.
Oh, that's so sweet. Fuck you, bitch.
Yeah, fuck you. Fuck you and the horse you rode on.
You fucking hosers.
Yeah, gotta take off, hoser.
Take off, eh?
I'm gonna get you the beer bottle. An empty one. You don't deserve a fill one.
I wouldn't want you to hit me with a full bottle. It might waste it. I'm gonna need that when I wake up.
All right.
Next letter. Mallory writes, Hello, I am responding to the call-out from last night's show. I can relate to TD in that I'm both trans and bisexual, but my severe health issues keep me from socializing and transitioning. There are times I thought I might literally die of loneliness. I maintain a fairly straight appearance for work, although I certainly would prefer not to. I have become very proactive in letting myself be compassionate, interested, and caring about those I interact with. That has made a difference. Despite a life mostly destroyed by depression, I am learning to give, and it's very fulfilling. Please pass my name along if I can help. We need to fight this isolation. Sincerely,
Mallory.
Mallory, yeah. I was like, sincerely, Josh writes. Okay. Thank you, Mallory. Next letter.
And actually, that is sort of important because the original writer, TD, was having issues with maintaining a feeling of compassion towards others.
Yeah.
So that's probably a good idea to sort of get out of your head and help.
It's true. All right. So Josh writes, hey, yeah, I have the same thing as TD. I'd love to have more people to connect with. Not that this is a big difference, but I'm also bi, which doesn't bother me at all, but I think it's just that I have to find the right ones, similar to DD, hopefully. Thanks for what you guys do, too. Josh. Well, thank you, Josh.
Okay, and the last one is just a repeat, so...
Yeah, so we're good.
We're good, yeah. So I just wanted to go briefly through some of the shorter mentions that we received, because we received long testimonials as well. So these are the shorter ones, and I just to once again thank you everyone who wrote in solidarity. Gilherm, Timehead, Terrence, Luke, Kevin, Mallory, and Josh. It's really appreciated, and I will make sure that all of this stuff is forwarded to TD as well, so that he can know that there are people out there who also feel as he does and care.
Yeah.
And have concern for his situation. So now I guess we should, what I was thinking for this show is that we would cover just some of the shorter responses to TD's situation, and then we could take some of the stuff that people sent us that doesn't really have anything to do with TD, but we could get Tom Golden, who is here. Sorry for not introducing you at the beginning.
Oh, no.
Got swept away.
I'm here. I'm happy to be here and listening. It's fun.
Yeah. So
Thank
we
you.
can. Oh, you're welcome. It's always great to have you and have your perspective. And otherwise, it's just all us. Well, Brian and the rest of us.
If you're not here, it's mostly just me and Allison bickering.
Yeah, just bitching.
And it sounds like people really enjoy that.
Yeah, I don't know why. It's kind of like watching Ronda Rousey get kicked in the head by an actual fighter. So
The neck. But yeah,
The neck.
It was the neck, yes.
She got kicked in the neck, and she's also complaining about it too. I hear.
She ate foot in the neck. Yeah.
Yeah, well, honestly, what did they expect? They had her matched with like women who were like, I don't know, accountants who were just like into MMA for fitness, and then they finally get someone who's won world championships in kickboxing in there in the ring with her, and there you go.
Bam.
Bam.
And patriarchy's to blame, apparently.
Yeah. I mean, I like some of the things that Ronda Rousey has said, and yet at the same time, there's some issues. So, yeah.
Okay, so why don't we? Okay, I'm going to tell you the section that we're going to now, Brian. I'll read the first one so that you have time to pull it up. It's the second section. So I'm going to read the first one, and this is going to be posed to the panel. So there is a question in it. Are you guys ready?
Yes.
Are you braced? Are your bodies ready?
My body is never ready, Allison.
I was born ready.
Well,
Nothing a bit of lube won't fix.
Oh yeah. Also, we have Grim on the panel. Yeah.
Hello.
Hello, Grim.
Oh.
That
Lube is my introduction.
Unbelievable, Allison. Gee.
I know. I had one job.
One job, Allison, but thank God I didn't have any jobs.
Yeah. Your job is only to receive wine. And
there you go. I just show up, and that's all I do.
Okay. All right. So Colin writes, for years I've watched one of my bisexual straight-acting friends get torn apart by his relationships with his family. What was said is true. He should find a group of nerds to hang out with. I found my group of friends, which our self-designated title is Heidi's Misfits. Don't try so hard to fit in. Instead, find people to fit with you. That's directed at TD, but it goes on. Also, with the previous topic, I myself struggle with clinical depression. I feel that my depression and a lot of my sadness stems from the fact that I no longer have someone to defend or protect. Ever since I was a 4-year-old, I spent most of my life protecting my mother from abusive men that she chose herself. In fact, my earliest memory is stepping in front of my mother and taking a punch to the gut for her. What I was wondering is, after such a long period of time fighting something and protecting something, how can I go from all that intensity to my current lifestyle, which is extremely peaceful? My mother has a woman that respects her now, and while they still argue, she isn't in any danger. Do I have to find someone else to protect in order to heal, or should I try to change my mindset? Okay, anyone want to step in there? Giving you, waiting. Okay, do you want me to step in? Everybody's quiet. Everybody is
I'm
very, very
organising
quiet.
my thoughts.
All right,
Step in, Allison. Do it.
step in.
I
Okay.
might order it.
All right. Well, I think change your mindset. So, in other words, do you want to change your mindset from being a protector? It seems like your situation is a little bit out of my depth to talk about. So I was hoping that Tom would chime in and maybe give some insight. I can continue to talk until okay.
I wish he would too. You know, it's a very tough one because there's not quite enough information there. The thing that crosses my mind is just to ask the fella, do you enjoy being alive right now without being a protector? And he doesn't really tell us that. But he does say that he's kind of grieving this role of being a protector, but he doesn't really tell us whether he's enjoying his life as it is, does he?
No, it doesn't seem to. Personally, I think that he does say that, do I have to find someone else to protect in order to heal? I think that would probably be more of a distraction from healing than actual healing. But
Well, progress.
Yeah, but I'm not sure entirely if that I'm accurate to that, because I mean, if he's spent his whole life protecting his mother, he must not have really had an experience of a parent who protects him.
Yes.
And I'm not sure where he would. It seems like that would end up having a lot of need in that area to have someone to be strong for him.
And the typical response a lot of times is to try and find someone else to protect and then replay that whole thing over again in order to try and heal it up. But, you know, I would just urge the fellow to look for ways that he can be in the present tense. You know, look for things that he really enjoys doing and do those.
Yeah.
You know, honestly, like, people are, when you set yourself up as someone who is the protector of a person, at least in this day and age, it's not really a healthy kind of thing. Usually, it's kind of there's not a whole lot of need for people to be protected in that way.
Right.
And so it's not going to be a healthy dynamic. It's not going to be somebody who actually needs your protection, and you know, like, I don't know, somebody with leukemia or something, and they need your support and protection and all of that. It just lies exquisitely open to anyone who is maybe looking to abuse that.
Yes. I agree.
Oh, there's another aspect of this. In addition to not defining yourself solely by the protector role, because that can be damaging to you, there's also the aspect of not defining everyone around you or even just one person in your life as needing to be protected, and that being their whole being. And it's important to not fall into a pattern where that is the only way you define yourself and that is the only aspect of yourself that matters to you. You have to be able to expand beyond that and celebrate yourself as a whole person and grow as a whole person. And if you can't do that, you can't form relationships, not functional ones. And I have some experience with this based on dating a guy whose mother had a disability that made her extremely fragile, like fragile enough that he had to be careful how he drove, like a chauffeur, or he would break her, literally. And he had moved out of the house. He was an adult. He was, we were adults, and his mom was mostly taking care of herself after having gone through a very, very rough time. Because that kind of medical problem can lead to other experiences that I'm not going to get into because it's more of a personal thing for her. But you go through some very rough times when you have a chronic pain syndrome, especially one that comes from a chronic body damage kind of syndrome. And so this guy, his whole existence for the longest time was about protecting people. He's also the only feminist man I ever dated. I will never, have to worry about that again because I'm married. But if I was dating men still, I would avoid feminist men like the plague because of some of the things that I experienced with this guy. One of the big ones was he couldn't relate to me as a person who didn't need his protection. And he couldn't relate to that not being the definition of our relationship. So it was like, instead of having a boyfriend, I had a dad. And that destroyed the ability for the two of us to actually form a functional, lasting, lifelong relationship. And it also made breaking up very difficult because it like the guy literally came to my house and tried to force an intervention so I wouldn't leave him with my family. And this is the kind of dysfunction that defining yourself strictly as a protector can lead to. And I'm not going to say everybody that considers themselves a protector is in that danger. It is an aspect of masculinity, and it is an aspect of adulthood. It's part of being in a relationship with another person. I'm very protective of my family members, and I wouldn't change that. But it's not the only thing, and it's not the most important thing. And it's not the sole defining factor in being invested in each other's welfare. So it's important to look at the things about yourself that make you who you are, besides being a protector. How you're smart. What is your method of learning? What is your method of doing? What skills and talents can you develop? And to a greater degree than you already have them. What things do you enjoy about the people around you, and what do they enjoy about you? Focus on those things for a while, and do not try to find somebody to protect until you've gotten to a point in your life where that is not the biggest defining characteristic that you see in yourself. Because if you make that a pattern, you will end up with that kind of dysfunction in every relationship that you have.
All right.
I think there's
Go ahead,
there's a
Grim.
tendency for guys to define themselves by their usefulness, their utility to other people, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's only really a bad thing when it's the only identity that you have, because then when you lose your purpose, you lose who you are. So defending your mother against attacks is pretty damn heroic, and good. But to have that be the only thing that defines you doesn't sound too healthy. The other thing I'm thinking of is, we don't have the information, but how young was this? Because you can miss out whole swathes of your life, growing up protecting someone. When my parents divorced, I spent a lot of time seeing myself in the role of looking after my mother and looking after my brother. And it eats into your time. It cuts into your ability to sort of define yourself and think about yourself when you're still young. Fortunately, I was 17, so I was pretty much an adult by then. But for other people, I know I've had friends who had to care for disabled parents and so on, and were defined by that role in their lives, and that absolutely dominated their identity and everything that they did. So I think it's important to find other ways to identify yourself and find value in your life, and to look back on what they did as a positive good thing, and it's understandable to be nostalgic for a time when you had, such absolute moral certitude and sense of purpose. But you've got to find something else. You've got to find something self-defined as well, I think. Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, I agree. I was thinking the same when I was letting the letter sink in myself. He does, in the last statement, he says, should I find someone else to protect in order to heal, or should I try to change my mindset? And I think he may already know the answer to that question. So I think that you put it very well. Does any final thoughts before I move on to the next letter?
No, I think you can.
Okay, I'm going to do it.
Carry on.
All right.
Nothing to see here.
Fair Use writes, you'd think someone who's a straight, white, breast-loving guy can't possibly understand how it feels to be hated or marginalized for their sexuality, even by people they know and love. Being in a relationship felt like being in an oasis of love in a world that rejects male sexuality. Not just in the workplace, where you'd reasonably expect certain heightened standards of professional conduct, but even in nightclubs, where I've been asked to leave for any number of reasons that never made sense at the time. But I'm starting to see the gender dynamics more clearly now. Welcome to the Tribalistic Prude Society. I was recently left without much social interaction for days on end over an extended period of years, mostly by choice, and apparently you can be psychologically damaged from a lack of social interaction, which is why solitary confinement has strict legal limits, including international laws which certain states choose to ignore. Even a prison has to let you out for an hour every couple of days, so why don't we allow ourselves the luxury of friends because we keep having bad experiences, because we keep getting kicked out of clubs, because we keep being callously ejected from loving relationships. So my imperfect solution, I aggressively seek out social interaction online, talk to people whenever I get the chance, and recognize that it's not enough, not even close. Thanks to tribalism, I maintain separate online identities to allow me to express opinions in different communities. I wish I'd found Facebook groups much sooner, because I've noticed once again, for the first time since junior high, I'm once again losing the ability to talk to ordinary human beings. Grabbing my groceries, I'm losing my sharpness, becoming a creep, someone to be feared and ignored. So whatever I'm doing, it's not even enough to maintain my command of verbal interaction. Okay.
Looks like nobody.
I was reading something that I wasn't supposed to be reading.
No, it's okay. That's entirely my fault. But pull up part 1.
Okay.
Instead of part 2, and that's entirely my fault. So everybody should direct their empty beer bottles to my head and not the Doge's.
One job, Allison. You had one job.
It's a lot
now
of stuff.
my job is to duck empty beer bottles.
But I have no jobs, so I'm okay.
I wanted to point out one thing about this letter. It sort of brings home the fact that more often than not, when people use the word creep, their definition for it is person that I want to treat like they're less than human, who is requesting that I not do that.
Yeah. All right, I got to try and find
part 1. Part
Paul,
1. Let's see if I can.
I think I found it.
No, it's not Paul. It should be part 1 should be Matt.
Okay, let's see.
Warning for suicidal men. Matt writes.
Oh,
And then warning
yes,
for disorganized badgers.
Yeah. We're just running around the cave. Okay, I got it. Matt writes, I'm currently listening to this episode. The suggestion that men should ask for help is a really bad idea. I know from personal experience that asking for help just leads to abuse, ridicule, and exploitation. There is no help for men in today's world. That's the whole letter.
I have to agree. I have to agree with that. That more likely than not, that's what you're going to get when you are actually in distress and you ask for help. It seems to be that in general, unless it's somebody that you already have a significant and strong bond with, like a best friend or something, When you need help, that's when nobody wants to go near you. And it is actually when you are a success as a man that everybody wants to give you stuff, give you opportunities, help you network, make that phone call for you to be a reference for a job, all of those things. It's when you're successful, people want to help you. When you're failing at just making a go of it, that's when everybody just doesn't even want to look at you. They're not going to return your calls. So I would have to say that's actually I would say that's something that men need to know. That's not to say that they shouldn't ask for help when they think that it's actually safe to do so. With a best friend, with a parent, with somebody who actually really cares about you, who is strongly bonded to you. Ask for help when you need it. But don't go to a government agency and expect them to have any sympathy for you when your girlfriend's abusing you or when you've been raped or whatever. Go there, but don't be devastated. Expect the reaction and expect the worst, because then all your surprises will be pleasant ones.
Yeah, and I think that's why it's really important that this show continues, because I think this is, in many cases, an outlet and a way of helping men who experience this kind of thing. Because if you write a letter to us, we're not going to laugh at it. I will do my damnedest to try to find a way of either reading it or responding to it if you sound like you're in need. It's a lot of work, but so it may take a while to get to you. But believe me, it's work that I want to do, to make sure that you don't feel isolated, you don't feel alone, you feel like you have someone you can talk to.
And I do want to let everybody know too, because I know that Allison can't respond to every email she gets, and I definitely can't respond to every email that I get. But I do read them all. And so it essentially is that it's not going into a void. It's not going into a big black hole where it's never where even light doesn't escape it.
Yeah.
In here, and it keeps. I'm hearing it, and those emails motivate me to continue, and I'm hearing your stories. There is a human being out there who is actually hearing what you have to say and understands what you have to say. So.
Yeah. Well, but it's like I said, it takes a while to be able to respond to everyone. I mean, we got so much, a deluge after that particular show of people men writing in particular, and it's a challenge, but I just want you to know that I care, and I don't want you to be facing this kind of isolation.
And I have to agree with Karen that the whole system is not set up for men. The way it's set up is basically for women. And our mental health system is set up for women in a one-on-one kind of face-to-face thing. And men generally find other paths a lot more productive. You know, if you listen to some of the things the men have been talking about tonight, most of them are saying in one way or another, I'm looking for a coalition. I'm looking for a group of people that I can feel comfortable with. And that is more in line with what men need. Men need a coalition. They need a group of other men where they can feel accepted and a part. And the mental health system really can't do that for them. You know, at least not the way it's set up right now.
This is really tough because I don't want to discourage people from reaching out for help, but I don't want to sugarcoat things either. So it's really hard to kind of address this stuff and come up with any sort of advice that's really truly encouraging. You should reach out for help, but you need to find people that you can trust. So I don't know, family, spouse or partner, really close friends, or a professional relationship that you can rely on, something like your regular doctor. I mean, they're basically duty bound to try and help you. But once you get beyond that level, the system at a greater site, I mean, I don't know what it's like in Canada or the US, I can only speak the British system, but the wider system just isn't really empathetic. It takes some kind of crisis before you get noticed and before you get help. In my case, it was a suicide attempt before the system took me seriously and got me to see a therapist and a psychologist, and that's what it took to get that going. So the broader system just isn't there, isn't set up for you. It's often set up on triage, and mental health is expensive and long term. So the health systems tend to shy away from that, and that's understandable. But it's not a lot of help when you really need it. So do reach out to someone, anyone, but brace yourself and don't necessarily expect a system to be empathetic in the way that a person will be.
Yeah, I think there is some good news here. The bad news is what we're talking about, that the system's basically, first off, it's taboo. The man's pain is taboo. Nobody wants to hear that crap. Everybody runs the other way, whereas when they hear a woman's pain, it's like a call to action. But the system itself, as we've said, is kind of built for women and not for men. But the good news is that we can start building things that may be more better suited for men's healing. And if you look at the what do you call those things? The shed movement.
The men's sheds.
Yes, I mean that to me is one of the things that can happen that can really be very, very helpful for men. And what we see here, Allison, is men who are kind of moving towards that shed idea. When you hear the men talk about wanting to connect with other men, and the guys who are responding to TD, it's like they're moving towards that arena now. And it makes me wonder, if men can't get together and 5 or 6 men have a hangout, have a Google Hangout together. They could be any place and do that. Form their own small coalition, to support each other, because they're probably not going to get that kind of support from the system as it is now.
Yeah, well, at least not. I don't know how healthy a lot of the support is for women. It seems to be more support to stay in their pain rather than get through it, because women's pain is, cha-ching, dollar signs.
Yes.
Yeah, but definitely the system does not help men. So I'm going to take the next letter. Mallory writes, a bitter warning for those seeking care during extreme emotional trauma. Some will use this to hurt a man more for whatever twisted reason. My experience presenting at the time as male and very suicidal was with 7cupsoftea.com. I connected with one of their listeners, explained some issues, friendless, family being extreme religious nuts, a terminal illness, and the woman at the other end tore into me for being a whiner and a wimp. I ended the conversation and contacted their supervisor, and I sent my most honest regards to the listener. Did it help? No. I was just so upset that I was disabused of any shred of hope, and I guess my rage saved the day. That said, if fail-safe assisted suicide were available, I would do it right away. It's not just the pain or sadness, it's never really knowing what I did to deserve their silence. I know it sounds self-pitying, but I remain confounded at my lack of capacity to form any real friendships on any level. Thank you for reading, Mallory. Whoa, this is not going to be a fun episode, by the way, guys, if you're listening. It's going to be a very, very hard one.
I've actually had somebody email me and tell me that when he called a suicide hotline, the person on the other end encouraged him to do it.
Oh, God.
And I would expect that, like, just as pedophiles are attracted to teaching positions in elementary schools and things like, and coaching soccer and being Boy Scout leaders and having those kinds of positions that give them access to their targets, I would expect that something like a suicide hotline, if you get your rocks off by treating people like shit and seeing them suffer and making their suffering worse, and maybe even goading them into suicide, you'd be really attracted to working for a suicide hotline, particularly since a lot of the people who man these phones, they're manning them in the middle of the night, and they're essentially unsupervised, and a suicidal person is maybe not going to report that to your superior, and yeah. So.
Yeah. Do you want to move on to the next one? I'm so sorry, Mallory.
There's
wish
one
there was
thing I
more I
would
could
point
do.
out, actually. Because of that potential problem with suicide hotlines, sometimes it's better to visit something like a forum where the posts are not necessarily so private. Like Reddit has a couple of subreddits that are actually sort of networks for people who are suicidal and who experience the problems related to being suicidal, and they're not a suicide hotline, but it can be very helpful to even if you don't like. I never really contribute to discussion in there. Sometimes I just go read, but it can be very helpful when you're dealing with it, when it becomes overwhelming. And you are having a difficult time going on, it can be very helpful to go into a forum like that and talk to somebody who's experiencing the same kind of problems that you are, or the same mentality that you get into, they're in the same place mentally. And there are people who post in there that their goal is to help too. So that can be very helpful.
All right.
Yeah, Allison, I had one more thing to say about that, if I could, before we go on.
Yeah.
And that is that the fellow was writing was basically saying that he was being shamed and punished in some ways for being dependent or for being sensitive. And it reminded me of my favorite quote by a man about this whole issue. And it was a guy named, what was his name? Peter Marin, who wrote this article about homelessness. But he talks about men being dependent. And here's what he says. To put it simply, men are neither supposed nor allowed to be dependent. They're expected to take care of others and themselves. And when they cannot or will not do it, then the assumption at the heart of the culture is that they are somehow less than men and therefore unworthy of help. An irony asserts itself. By being in need of help, men forfeit the right to it. And to me, that says it. I mean, it just says it. You know, when you hear men talk about being shamed for being depressed, you know, this is what they're running up against. And this kind of thing is in most people. This is not something that's pathological. This is in a lot of people, that they cannot tolerate dependent men. They can't tolerate men who are very depressed. And so they'll lash back. They'll say, he's not, you know, he doesn't deserve help. Oh.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, it's
That's
just
my
like the
2
man
cents.
flu. It's just like the man flu. You know, he's vulnerable because he's sick. Well, he's just being.
Karen?
Oh no, we lost to Karen.
What?
Okay. All right, guys, just so you know, we have a lot of letters, and I want to actually get to as many as possible. And they're all going to have pretty much like a lot of the same issues. So if we can just keep it to 1 or 2 people responding and then move on to the next one, we'll probably get through a lot more. And I think it's really important that we do.
Can you guys actually hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yes.
Okay. You were gone for a second. But all right. Next letter. Paul writes, Dear Honey Badger, you recently did a video on suicide, Crimea River. I was to let you guys know I felt depressed at times, and I struggle with mental illness and dyslexia. I have been through physical, sexual, and verbal abuse when growing up. All of these things have mentally screwed me up, and I want to share this with you guys. I never have suicidal thoughts, and I won't have that. I have a serious mental illness that causes me to think out loud and do things that cause people to think, are you okay? I don't know if you guys understand what I'm saying, but I love you guys' work, and I'm a huge fan. Keep up the good work, guys.
Yeah, unfortunately, there's not a lot to unpack there or to respond to, but thank you for writing in, Paul, and telling us about your situation.
Yeah.
There's not much we can say in response. Right. Let's move on to the next one.
Tyler has made an inquiry. Hello, Badgers. I have a story relevant to the suicide depression of men. When I was 18, my brother very suddenly died of MRSA, a type of staph infection in hospitals. While we all grieved, my mother and father and I couldn't sleep at night. After the second night, I decided Eff it, I'm going to play some guitar. So I snuck into the living room and started playing in the dark. I was trying to stay quiet, but in about 15 minutes, both my parents came out and sat with me in the dark. I played for about 30 minutes or maybe an hour. I don't really remember. Afterward, we hugged, cried, turned on the lights, put the guitar away, and went to bed. Honestly, this matches exactly what Tom is talking about. Anyway, you can use this if you want, and I'll drop a message in chat. Thanks. All the best, Tyler.
Mm. Wow.
Yeah.
Thank you, Tyler. You know, that's exactly right. That's the masculine way, is playing that guitar, man. And the action put you in touch with the emotion, brought it through in the same way that talking about it might help somebody else. So bless his heart. What a tough thing, too, to have your brother die suddenly. I mean, that's just a really, really tough event.
Yeah. I'll just move on to the next letter unless... okay. Mr. X writes, right at the top, I'd like to be called Mr. X. I'm male. I think that should be obvious. But maybe not. This could be read on any show, but I prefer more people to less, as I'd like as many answers and perhaps anecdotes as possible. In my late 20s, I battled with loneliness and depression. Seems like a common theme to your letter writers. I've been struggling with this idea for a while, and often when I start writing, I digress into things that are off topic. But the core of the idea is this. Is it stupid of me to think I can actually find a woman who likes me for who I am as opposed to what I can provide for her? Unpacking that, I don't expect to find someone who's going to go with me to every Comic-Con dressed as an accompanying character to my cosplay, or play D&D with me every week, or not expect me to lose 5 pounds because I probably need to. I expect someone who will have an overlap of interests and be a support to my other interests, even if she personally doesn't partake. I think this because it's how I've tried to be a boyfriend to every girl I've been with. I don't like shopping, but I'll set aside some time to go shopping with you if you like it. You don't have to love D&D, but every so often, listen to the breakdown of a fun session. I found being involved in things I don't naturally like with people I do naturally like, it helps me to develop at least an appreciation for it, if not a genuine interest. This is what I consider liking someone for who they are. Is this a pipe dream? In my relationships, I found generally I'll be more supporting. Yeah, be more supporting. And when I need an ear to hear me or just a person to be there, they just aren't. I want someone who will be there through thick and thin. Fat stacks, small pennies. Is this impossible in your opinions? Thank you for listening, Mr. X. So
it's not impossible. In fact, the activities that he described, the comics, the D&D, stuff like that, there are and have from the beginning been girls in those communities. And to be honest, it does kind of suck. The social justice invasion has created an influx of girl gamers instead of just gamers who happen to be girls, and female comic book fans instead of comic book fans who happen to be female. And it makes it a little harder to sort through the not so cream of the crop sexist kind of girls that expect you to like them for them but don't feel like they have to reciprocate in order to be in a functional relationship. But if you bide your time and enjoy getting to know people and judge women by the same standards that you would judge men by in your relationships and your friendships, where you would expect the same things from a female friend that you expect from a male friend in terms of being trustworthy, in terms of reciprocation, of your behaviors, your dedication to the friendship, your trustworthiness, your consideration for your friend. These things they're not just something that you expect from guys. They're something that you should expect from gals too. And expect accountability. Expect the same level of being grateful when somebody does a favor, not expecting favors to be done, but not being afraid to ask for help when it's needed. The same thing that you would expect from a guy. And that's when you'll find the gal that you can relate to, who will relate to you, who can accept your independence, and who has things in common with you and can enjoy the things that you have in common together. That's really how my husband and I got together. We had to bide our time and get through circumstances that basically we would never have expected to be together. And I'm a gamer, and of course I'm not into the superhero type comic books. I'm more of the old Hammer House variety. But we have those things in common, and we've enjoyed years and years together because of it. And we have things about ourselves that are independent from each other, and that makes things easier in the relationship. So it can happen. It just takes time. We were almost 30 when we got together. So don't give up.
Well, that's a really important point you brought up, Hannah, about expecting from women what you would expect from men. And I think we also have to point out the natural tendency of humans to accept the good graces and the happiness that is around them and kind of grow used to it. And a lot of times when you have a person who treats others with a lot of respect and really being interested in them, especially when women receive this sort of treatment, at least neurotypical women, they end up kind of becoming accustomed to it and expect it. And so you kind of have to remind the other person that just leading by example, that's great, but it doesn't always work out because the other person doesn't realize that they are not doing their share of being the exact same kind of person that takes the interests of the other and all the other communal and cooperative things that he was describing. So I think it's also important for the person to sort of demand a certain level of respect, or at least distance themselves away from a person who consistently shows kind of a lack of appreciation. But it is important to point out, I think, that humans, we kind of naturally, we reach for, the sweet fruit, and once we have that sweet fruit, we want to reach for even higher, sweeter fruit. And we have to take a moment to appreciate and to also look inward and see, how am I not giving to others? What am I doing in my life that could be improved? And I think that is something you should also expect of your friends if you yourself are that person.
I wanted to just add as well, there is no human being on the planet that will not annoy you sometimes. And I can't stress this enough. Being able to love somebody despite the fact that some of the things that they do annoy you. Men do this. Men do this all the time. Women increasingly do not. Women increasingly are incapable of maintaining a relationship with somebody who sometimes annoys them. Leaves the cap off the toothpaste, leaves the toilet seat up, whatever, drops their dirty clothes right next to the dirty clothes basket. These are all things my boyfriend does. They all annoy me. I love him to pieces. Women increasingly think that they are entitled to a perfect relationship, to a perfect man. And yeah, you have to realize that you can't be somebody's completely non-annoying perfect man. You just can't. And if you're with a woman who seems to be incapable of tolerating the little ways that you annoy her, and sometimes even big ways that you might annoy her, in return for you putting up with and loving her despite the ways she annoys you, then you're not with the right person. You're not with somebody who can have a relationship. So.
Indeed. Yes, and that's very true. People are annoying creatures. Living with one is taxing because no matter what, they'll do something that annoys you. And you're right. Men just swallow it. Believe me, ladies, if you're listening here, you have annoyed your husband multiple times throughout your relationship. Today, probably.
Multiple times in the last hour.
Yeah, and he has simply said, okay, I'm annoyed, but I'm not going to take it any further than that. And yet you do. Often women do. Okay, so Ben writes, hello, honey badgers. I hope I've caught you in a generous mood because I could really use some advice. I'm suffering from a complete lack of motivation, and it's slowly killing me. I'm going to college for chemical engineering right now. What should have been my graduating year ended 3 years ago, and I've been trying to repeat classes ever since with worsening grades each time. I haven't quit yet at the behest of my father, who thinks I'm too far along and might as well finish, and my ever-increasing debt, which will require a high salary to pay off. I can trace the cause of my situation to apathy, and the cause of that back to a realization I had 4 years ago, that I would never find a compatible woman to marry. It may not seem like much, but every decision I'd made in preparation for my future was under the assumption that I could find someone to spend it with. I didn't start studying Chem E because I enjoyed it, same with college and taking on the $50,000 debt necessary to attend. The difference between when I started and now is that I can't seem to commit myself to my classes. Now I lack the funds to continue, and my father has started co-signing loans so that I can. It's a complete mistake, but he is convinced that I can succeed despite years of evidence to the contrary. I've tried to speak to him about these issues, but bringing up my lack of motivation inevitably leads to hysterics about video games and how the internet has ruined my generation. I love my father, who's a kind and smart man, who's given me more second chances than I rightly deserve, but it speaks to his ignorance of today's social climate when admitting to having lost your reason for living gets you a rant about how games are all death and violence. I'm willing to accept the blame for the situation my choices and actions have led to it, but I don't know how to solve it. I don't know how to remotivate myself to study, and I don't know how to convince my father that my education has become a lost cause. Any advice you have would be appreciated. Regards, Ben.
All right, the first thing I'm going to point out is the answer to finding yourself in a deep hole doesn't involve digging it deeper. This is a really, really hard decision for people to make, especially when there's debt involved. But if you're studying in an area of study that you're not passionate about, in fact, it doesn't inspire you at all, and you're looking at going into a profession where every single day for the rest of your life would be a grind, that you wouldn't, not only would you not love what you're doing, but you wouldn't even like what you're doing. Is it really worth taking on more debt and really worth digging that hole deeper to force yourself into that situation? Is that going to benefit you? And the question becomes, are you going to be able to finish that? Are you going to be able to get into that position? And once you're in that position, are you going to be able to work your way out of it to do something that you really want to do? And it's a hard decision, especially for a man to make, because men are used to putting utility before need for themselves and doing jobs that are a grind every day, doing jobs that damage their bodies, doing jobs that are deadly. But to take on increasing levels of financial debt to put yourself in that position doesn't sound to me like it makes a lot of sense. I know that doesn't help with the part about talking to your father, but I would take the time to very seriously consider whether or not, honestly, whether or not to pursue this course of study, to change your major, to back away from school and maybe go back later, because these are not things that are lightly made decisions, and they're not things that you do just out of a sense of duty and actually succeed at them. They're things that you actually have to have some passion for. But if you do decide, I'm going to finish this, I started this, I'm going to finish this, I'm going to become this, I'm going to become a chemist, I'm going to do this job, then you have to look at how. And when you make a plan like that and you decide that you're going to pursue a course of action like that, and it is hard because you have no motivation, the only thing you can really do is take every task, every bit of it, and break it into pieces and address each piece individually instead of trying to look at the entire mountain all at once. And that means not looking at your course of study as I have X number of years and this much money to deal with and my overall grades and everything. It's this homework assignment, this test, this formula that I need to memorize. Get through this night of work, one thing at a time. And if you can face that, then you might be able to do this. But if you're looking at doing that, and even that advice doesn't make it sound possible to you, then you got to get out of this, because you're not going to get through it.
Yeah, and I just wanted to briefly say, you're right. This has nothing to do with video games and other stuff. What's really demotivating young men is the situation with families. But it's not. It's like are you going to get a partner at the end of this? Because this I mean, they have done studies on this. Young men choose their potential career path based on what they think will get them a mate. And when you present the fact that this is unlikely to happen, or at least you're very unlikely to find a partner who isn't going to leave you and take away your kids, it becomes completely demotivating. And I stepped over you, Brian, so I'm going to let you go.
Well, I wanted to finish. I want to point out one other thing. This is not the end of the world. If you decide to drop all this, you decide you're going to have this debt, you're going to change your major, you're going to drop out of school, it's not the end of the world. This is something that a huge section of Generation Y and an even bigger section of the millennial generation are facing. And you're not alone, and it is not, it's not death for your future. It's simply a change. So don't panic at the sight of this decision, and don't be despondent over it. Look at it as a challenge, and don't panic.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you said most of the stuff I wanted to say, but the one thing I wanted to add is it seems that Ben, clearly, as evidenced by your letter, you decided to go on this academic journey because you wanted looking, to be like a good catch, and you ended up spending a great deal of money and time chasing that. And I think what you want to know now is what you should do next. And I think that what Hannah suggested is really good advice. I also think that you could maybe, because you got pretty far, judging from what I see, that you're in your last, near the end of your journey, maybe you can find something analogous to what you already know or what you've been learning so far that you might be much happier doing. And then I would try to work on living for yourself to make yourself happy first. And you got to make yourself like you got to make everything that you're trying to do not because you're hoping to net the affections of someone that you've never met or that you don't know is out there, because it's just I don't think it's going to be as useful to you. You have to basically go chase your own dreams for their own sake. So maybe you can still use what you've learned so far to find something that you love.
Yeah. Tom, did you have anything to add to this, or?
Yeah, I would just agree with what was just said. I would just urge the fella to spend some time looking at what he wants. I mean, we know what your father wants. We know probably what your family wants. But do you know what you want? And it reminds me of in Norway, they have this thing called ashes time, which is the time for young men when they don't know what they want. And so they call it ashes time because the parents will give him a place in the basement that's like next to the furnace. And he stays there until he figures out what he wants. But this ashes time is like it's societally blessed. They have this time when they got to figure out what they want, and that's what I hear this fellow struggling with: is what do I want? And we need to give men time and space to figure that out. And because it's important that he looks at that, not what his father wants, not what his mother wants, not what anybody else wants, but what he wants. Yeah. That's my 2 cents.
And I ultimately say that I think his father probably wants what he feels is best for him.
Yes, the father, I'm sure, is genuine in what he wants, but it's not what the son wants. The son.
No. What I mean by that is that I think the father genuinely wants what he thinks is best. That's not necessarily what the son really is best.
Yes.
So, I mean, like you said, you need you need to just step back and figure out what you want.
Yes.
And I think that, to be honest, like it must be really difficult if your father just every time you try to talk to him just throws a rant your way.
Yes.
And
And it's difficult for men anyway to look at what they want because
yeah,
we're basically bred and trained to do for others. You know.
Yeah, it goes back to the previous letter. It's about,
Yes.
needing to be useful to the world.
Yes. Yes.
So,
okay, so Eric, let's move on to Eric. Eric writes,
okay.
I'll just take two, and then you can do the next one. Okay.
All right.
All right. Don't worry, you're good.
No, I know I'm good. Go ahead.
Yeah. I'm a profoundly unhappy 32-year-old man. I have no real friends to speak of. I have no job, no girlfriend or wife, no prospects of ever having any of those. My physical ailments leave me with no strength or energy and a considerable amounts of pain when I try to do anything and physically involved. My mental and emotional state isn't really any better. Despite having a comparatively high IQ, I find myself being able to accomplish very little. I lack motivation and the ability to concentrate. I lack organizational skills. I also seem to completely lack the ability to leave any long-lasting impression on anyone. I had a girlfriend once, but in the end she dumped me for being too dependent and not being man enough for her, despite the fact that she had issues very similar to mine. The worst thing of all is I've been diagnosed with dependent personality disorder. For a man to be dependent on other people is completely unacceptable, and pretty much every single person I've met. No woman wants to date a man like me. I'm currently seeing doctors and therapists to try and sort out everything that's wrong with me, but progress is too slow. I finally got an appointment to see a neurologist, but it isn't until the end of the year. In the meantime, my parents are struggling to feed me, and I have little to no strength or energy to help them with even the basic things. This is particularly devastating to me because I get my motivation from interactions with people. Being with people makes me happy, but no one wants anything to do with me, and I have no idea why. I can see why people don't want to take care of me, but what's so wrong with me that no one thinks to reach out to me and give a call or invite me to their house? I've completely given up on dating. No woman wants to date a guy that can't take care of himself. This, more than anything, is a source of my depression, though. There's nothing in the world I want more than a meaningful, loving relationship with a woman I can respect and admire. The fact that I have absolutely no hope in achieving this is the primary killer of my motivation. Why achieve when no one cares? Why do anything when the thing I want most forever is denied me? Okay. Unfortunately, being a man, I'm told by most people to man up and do things anyway. I feel like no one, even my family, really cares about how I feel. What am I supposed to do with this? I don't want to end my life prematurely, but if all I've got to look forward to is more loneliness, what the heck do I want to live for? I don't know what to do. I don't know how to be different from what I am now. I don't know what I'm doing wrong aside from being too physically broken to do physical labor. Everyone tells me I need to do something, but just what is it I'm supposed to do? I don't like complaining to complete strangers, but saying anything about this to the people I know will just result in them telling me to grow up and take responsibility for myself. Maybe they're right, but I don't know how to do that. Okay, apologies, Grandma. I just wanted to finish that.
That's okay. Main point I've got is that the dependent diagnosis isn't necessarily as bad as you think it is. That was part of my diagnosis when I did finally see a psychologist, and I was absolutely devastated by the idea that this person had thought I was completely dependent on other people, and I didn't feel that it was true. And my therapist then got me a copy of the DSM or whatever it is, and showed me the entry on it, and I read through it, and it's absolutely not as bad as it seems, but that may be contributing to this guy's feeling so low and crap. So if you can get hold of the documentation, read up on it, it's not as bad as it sounds. It sounds way worse than it is.
I just wanted to mention a couple of things. What he's describing is a common experience for people who have chronic disorders that are in any way disabling, especially people who have invisible disabilities, chronic pain disorders, mental health disorders, and just various things that people can't see the damage overtly. You're not on crutches or in a wheelchair or wearing a brace or anything like that. So you end up, people don't want to think about your suffering. And like there's a different way that people don't relate when they can see your suffering. It's out there, they can't avoid it, and so there's other things that they do. But when it's chronic pain, people, they don't, it's kind of a hard thing to explain. And I actually wrote about this in a different blog. I might actually have to republish this because I hear it rather frequently in the men's rights movement. But they don't know what to do when it's chronic and incurable, and they can't help you. They don't know how else to relate. It's a very human thing when you're faced with somebody else's suffering or somebody else's problem, difficulty, hurdle that they have to get over, or things that they can't, to want to fix it and alleviate the other person's suffering, or provide some relief in their situation. And as soon as people are faced with a situation where they can't do that, they don't know what to do. And every time they see your suffering, it's a reminder. So it takes relationship building where you can be patient with people, sort of not leveling off, but sort of wandering off and coming back, and wandering off and coming back, and eventually getting used to you before you get past that point, and they can be comfortable. And it's not your fault that that's happening. It's just a human thing. And it's something that people can learn to overcome, and learn to do better, and learn to sort of relate better to you and your situation. But it does take time, and it takes patience on both sides. And it's not fair, but it can be done. And I want to say, don't give up on the people around you for that. And don't feel like you're useless just because you don't do things the way everybody else does, or you can't do things the way everybody else does, and your way of doing things has to be mitigated or changed by your situation. And I've lived with a caregiver throughout most of my childhood who had a chronic pain disorder. My mother has actually got 5 different health problems that cause chronic pain. And one of the things that she, as a woman, she was given a little more leeway, because society looks at women suffering different than society looks at men suffering, as we mentioned before. But she had to look at life in terms not of just what am I unable to do, but what can I do? And that's kind of where you have to go too. There's a lot of things that you are unable to do. There's a lot of things that you're prevented from by your physical limitations, and that's okay. Don't feel like you have to overcome every single physical limitation. Look at what you can do and take yourself in that direction. And don't worry about what other people think of you for it, because they're not you. They don't have to live your life, and they don't have the right to tell you how you should.
I just wanted to add to, with things like invisible disabilities, chronic pain, stuff like that. One of the problems I think that people have is, when you see somebody with a broken bone, or bruises, or an obvious injury, or even they have a brain injury that you can see on an MRI, or a CAT scan. It's you're suffering because you have an injury, right? But when it's something like chronic pain, or something like a disorder, this dependency disorder, things like that, or depression, all of these things, there is this feeling, I think, among a lot of people, particularly with men, that there's no injury, so what are you complaining about? You're not hurt, so what are you complaining about? You're not sick, right? You're not running a fever. You don't have a rash. You know, you don't have a big your tongue's not swelling up. You're not wheezing, right? Your nose isn't like pouring green snot. You know, what are you complaining about? Just get over it, because it's invisible to them. And I think that might be interfering with people's ability to relate to other people who have these sort of invisible disabilities and invisible disorders. So I know Allison wanted to say something, or Brian.
I'm going to go. Me and Brian figured it out with a little bit of passive aggression. Oh. Fine, Brian, fine. Okay. All right, fine. Okay, so what I wanted to say is that my personal experience is I dealt with like a very debilitating mental illness, and part of it was just breaking it down into small steps, and eventually I had to just believe that I could get over it. And in some cases, a lot of these, like I think a lot of mental illness, I don't want to say that it is that you should all listen to people who are just like, fine, get over it, just stop malingering. But it is possible to make positive steps and improve how you feel. It can take a very long time. It's like rehabilitating having a spinal cord injury and rehabilitating your ability to walk. Anybody who says, "Why aren't you walking?" Like, why weren't you walking yesterday? What the hell why is it taking so long? That's an asshole. Get him out of your life. Like, they don't have a clue. So if you have a mental illness and you got somebody like that in, don't tolerate their bullshit. It is a hard road to rehabilitate the mind. It's possible, but it's still hard. And people who demand you to do it on their schedule, don't listen to them. But on the other hand, I don't want to introduce this idea of learned helplessness, or that you can do nothing, because you can. I know from my own experience that I managed to work my way slowly, step by step, and it was a long process of rehabilitation to move myself out of a mental illness that was keeping me basically locked inside my house. And I had to take, at each step, I had to take responsibility for the mental landscape and slowly work on the habits that I had around my fears, around my behaviors, and slowly break them down and create new habits. And it was a slow, painful process, and I'm still going through it, and I'm still going through the process of rehabilitation, because sometimes I still have anxiety attacks around my phobias. But it is possible to retrain your mind, but you have to believe that you can do it. And don't listen to people who want you to do it on their schedule. You have to do this on your own schedule.
But I would say too that it does help to have people around you that will hold you accountable to your goals that you've set yourself.
Oh yeah.
That will help to remind you and push you a little bit. Not a lot, and not to just get over it like right now or on my schedule or when it's convenient for me, but to hold you to your goals and sort of be there to give you the nudge and say, yeah, no. You're actually going to apply for that job. Or no, you're not going to quit your job, because you know you don't have another job to go to. So you're not going to quit your job today, and you're not going to quit it tomorrow. You're going to, if you want to quit this job, find another job first.
Yeah, and in my case, I had my husband, and I remember there were moments where I'd be like, I don't want to do this. And he'd be like, no, we should go out to this restaurant because you'll hate it.
Yeah, of course he did, because he's sick that way.
Yeah, he's a little bit of a sick puppy, but but I would go and I would hate it, and I would have I would have a problem, but I dealt with it, and that was how I moved into a position where I could be more and more comfortable with things that I was uncomfortable with before. And he never really let me rest on my laurels in that sense. And, and that was important, because it's important to be challenged, but also not.
It's important that it be somebody who cares about you and you can trust, to not fuck you up. You know, who's gonna be just be firm and do it, help you out of love, right? And out of genuine caring for you, and out of knowing what you're capable of.
And not possibly also a trollish spirit. Tom, I saw you unmute, so if you have anything to say, get in there.
No, I was probably fidgeting.
Oh, okay.
Fidgeting, that's a bad mental habit, Tom.
I got to work on that.
You should be ashamed of yourself.
I am ashamed.
Unbelievable. Fidgeting.
You only had one job.
Not to fidget.
One job, Tom. Not to
It feels so good to fidget, though.
Yeah, well, at least I don't have any jobs, so that's okay. That's all I care about.
No, your job is to tell everyone they have one job.
That's right. That's my job.
And you do it well.
One of the things I am thinking about it, and the more we hear these men speak, is how much has the last 50 years of anti-male crap in education and in the media played into this? And it's like relationships are a really delicate kind of mechanism, and we've thrown things way off by telling men they're the problem and women that they deserve more. And it's like, what are we doing? And how much has this kind of bullshit brainwashing impacted people like TD and the rest of these guys? You know, I think it could be a really powerful piece.
Oh, when you grow up with that kind of the constant sort of low-level pervasive message in the culture that there's something wrong with you, that girls are better, that girl power, girls rule and boys drool, boys are stupid, throw rocks at them,
right.
All of this stuff, right? And on top of that, at the exact same time, they're eliminating recess at school, they're eliminating all of the ways that boys get their energy out so that they can actually sit still in the classes that they hate.
Yep.
And then also at the same time, they're eliminating boy-only activities, right? So you essentially have a situation where boys are not allowed to associate with each other, just with each other. It's seen as wrong, and I think that these boys, you know, even 5, 6, 7 years old, when every single, you know, the girls are allowed to have their thing, right? The girls are allowed to have their sleepovers, and the girls are allowed to have their clubs, and the girls are allowed to have their jump rope time, and the girls are allowed to have their school activities and their teams and their Girl Scouts and all of those things, the Girl Guides. They're allowed to do all of those things as girls, just with girls. And boys are not allowed to have any of that. You have to wonder if boys are, and this is one of the things that really drives me crazy about feminism and the culture right now, is that human males are the most cooperative with each other of any males of any species on this planet.
Yes.
And it's a fragile cooperation. Because it's only maybe a couple million years old as far as a behavior, right? As far as a capability of a species, right? It's only since we split off from chimps that we started doing this, right? That men started cooperating to the level that they do, the kind of level that lands space probes on comets and puts men on the moon and cures cancer, hopefully one day, right? That kind of cooperation that built everything that we're enjoying right now, including the network that we're broadcasting on, right? All of it. And we are actually doing everything in our power to undermine men's ability to form cooperative relationships with each other right from the time that they're in elementary school, right from the time that they're in kindergarten or even daycare, right? Right from then, we're saying it's not okay for boys to hang out together without the supervisory influence of adults or girls.
Amen.
How is that okay?
Well, I think we do it because we know the strength of it, but and it's managed to maintain. And I wonder also if some of this abusive behavior actually allows for that kind of cooperation too. I know this is going to be controversial, because it prevents this almost this I would say this in-group bias, which is almost like a competitive thing between women, which is what I've noticed, is that women can't cooperate because they can't see themselves, their value, in terms of what they produce rather than who they are. And if you only see yourself in terms of your value, in terms of who you are, it's really difficult to work with other women to create value. But that's just a thought I threw out. There you go. Do what you want with it.
I want to build on that. It not being able to see themselves in terms of that value, they don't value each other that way as well. And there's something that I watch a lot of men do, and I learned to do growing up, that I've noticed a lot of women around me don't do. Like, they'll talk about admiring other women, but they don't necessarily do it in the same way. They don't take their inspiration from other women in a way of, I want to adopt this quality, this characteristic that I see in this other person that I find admirable, as frequently. I see that more in boys and men, where women want to do the same things another woman does, and they want to experience the same reaction from everybody that another woman gets. Men notice the value of characteristics, admirable characteristics, whether it's somebody who is diligent and trustworthy, or works hard, or is tough, or is, whatever, moral, any of that. It seems to come through that the characteristic, that the person's character matters more than it comes through what they get, what their reward is for exhibiting that character. And I think that's a big difference in the ability to cooperate, because when we can value each other for character, we understand how we interact together better. When we understand what we can do for each other and what we can get from each other in terms of working together towards the same project. And I think that handicaps women in being able to do that.
Yeah, and it's like to a certain degree, I think the casual abuse, and don't get me wrong, what we're doing now to boys is pretty much fucking unspeakable. But to a certain level, I think that we probably, not that we need to abuse boys, but we need to allow a little bit of roughness into girls' lives, and reduce what we do to boys. Like, a little bit less girl power, a little bit more Susie Q, get off your fucking high horse. If you want to get something done, you got to work for it. That kind of thing.
This is one of the reasons why I hate how we've isolated boys from each other, is because a lot of their behavior, and a lot of the very behavior that feminists find so objectionable because it's misogynistic in the way boys relate to each other, is very much about testing each other and trying to improve each other. If a 6-year-old boy tells another 6-year-old boy you throw like a girl, that boy is going to try and throw better. He's just going to try. He's just going to try harder. And I think it's an instinctive behavior based on sort of the notion that, when we're all standing in a line with spears, I can't afford the guy to the right and the left of me to crack under the pressure. When we're all being charged by that frickin' muskox that we need to bring down, I can't afford the guys on either side of me to crack under the pressure. They need to be good enough. And so I think that instinct to test each other, and through that sort of the daring and the I double dog dare you, right, to stick your tongue to the flagpole in the cold weather. That kind of stuff, that's like so typical boy stuff, and it seems to be so instinctive to boys, and there's a reason for it. It's not bullying. There is such a thing as bullying, but that's not it. If
they're not forcing them, it's a double dog dare.
That joshing and that ribbing and that yo mamaing and the shit talking and the jostling and making fun of him for wearing a scarf on a cold day. What are you? You just using a scarf now? All of that stuff it's not bullying. That's what guys who are friends do with each other, and it's they do it for a reason.
Yes.
And to deprive boys of that, or to tell boys who do that instinctively that that's wrong and it's mean and it's bad, right? Makes the boys who are being tested feel like they're bullied when they're not necessarily being bullied, and it makes the boys who are doing the testing feel like there's something horrible about them, that they feel the urge to do that.
Well, also, maybe there's a possibility here that women and girls can learn something from these social aspects, the way that men and boys socialize with each other. Maybe for once we can shut up about, oh, men need to learn from us how to feel and how to respond to each other. Maybe once,
Intelligent.
we can learn from men and boys and put them in the position that maybe they know something that we don't. Maybe it's a little possible. And I wanted to say one thing to Hannah, and I agree with what you had to say. And to be honest, I admire both you and Karen, particular aspects of your character that I feel I lack. In Karen's case, it's an ability to just let it slide and forgive people for shit.
Yeah, just fuck.
Yeah, and with you, Hannah, it's your ability to just really dig into the logical reality of something. Because I can just chase fucking rainbows till the cow comes home, but sometimes I need to have that curtailed a bit so that I figure out a much more grounded approach to the concepts that I bring about. So I just wanted to throw that out there, and I think Brian has been waiting patiently.
And Tom seemed to want to say something too.
I think Hannah wanted to say something. Tom?
Okay, who's saying something here?
Who's on first?
Where's the stop?
Stand up for yourself, Brian, you pussy.
Hey.
Now I want to
He's
hug
not a
everybody.
pussy, he's a doge.
Now I want to hug everybody.
Okay, all right, somebody has to speak. So
All right, I'm going to go in there then, because I thought Hannah was next. But Matt writes, before I read this next letter, I would also suggest that perhaps there are mail spaces you can find on the internet where people talk. Men talk about their problems and their experiences. And to the last writer, Ben, I would look into that. And Eric also. He was the last guy. Maybe also look up some MGTOW guys. I know that they have a lot of really useful resources within the MGTOW community, so you can probably find something there to help you out.
Yes, other men that understand.
Exactly.
Yep.
Actually, I know A Voice for Men has a chat forum that a lot of discussion takes place in, and different topics and everything, so that might be a place to start, because you'll be able to, from there, find other forums that are maybe more specialized also if you get there and if you find it's not what you're looking for. But it's a good place to start, and it may be a good place to stay.
And there's also the Honey Badger Facebook group too, if that's...
Yeah. There's the Honey Badger group. There's a Honey Badger Facebook group, and a lot of discussion takes place in the comments under articles on our blog too.
Yeah, it can be a pretty feisty place though.
The Honey Badger Facebook group can be pretty feisty too, but
yeah. But the moderator is a great guy, so consider it.
Yeah, he is. Okay, so now I'll. Oh, and the other thing is the Your Mama jokes are. There's a name for that. They call that the dozens. So if you want to find some really funny ones, go on YouTube and Google the dozens. All right. Matt writes, I was listing through the Wayback Technology of the interweb screen page to HBR number 15 and wanted/needed to say thank you. So thank you all. I lost my over 20s and now over halfway into my 30s into what my doctor is calling myofascial or fascial pain syndrome. So hearing about similar... I'm sorry?
Myofascial.
Yeah, myofascial pain syndrome. So hearing about similar struggles of other people makes me feel less isolated. The direct correlation was on things like feeling shame for riding the shopping cart and people thinking you're making it up. Unfortunately for me, it's being forced into near homelessness by my dad dying of cancer to get the medical community to listen to me at all. It's a scary world out there for guys like me who are stuck in bed for 3 to 4 months a year. Being the least sympathetic group to society, there aren't a lot of options for help out there. White, male, without a litter of children, might as well be a badge of does not get help. Beyond the pain, the loss of the ability to take care of yourself is devastating to a man. So the way some of you take care of the men in your lives is amazing. I look forward to your podcast. Matt Hazmat Singer. Well, thank you, Matt. It's really good of you to write that to us and share your story. Tom, I see that you're not muted. Were you going to say something?
Oh, I'm fidgeting again.
Darn you!
He's a fidgeaholic.
Oh.
Jeez.
Yeah, I know it can be really despondent at how little our society cares about men.
Yeah. All of this, every time we go through a letter, I find myself coming back to the what we call the empathy gap. And the fact that because you're not, in your condition, you're white, you're male, you don't have children, but you also mentioned that you, have a condition that leaves you bedridden for months at a time. On the surface of it, it would seem that because of all those factors, you're considered less useful to society, and in specific, less useful because of things that you didn't have any control over. So that's one of the reasons why we do this show. I mean, for me anyway, it's one of the largest ones. And I think that I don't know. I wish I could tell you that there's something that can be done to help you. I know that we've gone over how hard it is to be a man with all those factors. But I would also suggest going to people in the groups and talking to them, and maybe you can make a connection with someone that can help you in some other way.
I think what he was saying was I was listening through the Wayback Technology of the Interweb Screen page. Okay, it's a little bit confusing what he's saying, but yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not sure what to say. I'm sorry that there's not a hell of a lot of help out there. Maybe one day.
What Brian was saying about the empathy gap, I think that's been very apparent today with International Men's Day. I don't know if you guys followed the tag at all, but so much of it was abuse and dismissal and.
Oh yeah.
It's just it was just horrible, really.
It's unbelievable. It's like this is what really makes me fucking furious. Janice Fiamengo did a wonderful video today where she, in detail, just as Judgy Bitch did before her, and she cites Judgy Bitch's article, goes into exquisite detail about essentially how much work men put in to make our society operate. I would not be sitting in a house, however fucked up it is because it was built in 1952 and then renovated by a moron. That would be not me. But that would be not me. No. I fixed it.
I don't. Freudian slip there.
But I would not be sitting in this comfortable house. It's fucking cold out right now. It's like it's -7 or something like that. It's going to be -15 tonight. My house is nice and comfy because somebody built my furnace properly and installed it properly, and there's natural gas pumping into it, right? And all of my electricity hasn't set the house on fire yet. It's been 64 years, no fires yet, right? And all of this stuff, all of these people who did this were men. Every single one of them, the people who put the new roof on, right? Everybody who did this was men. The people who paved my street, who made my sidewalks, the fucking neighbor who does the public sidewalks whenever it snows. He gets out there with this snowblower and he does both sides of the street for the entire block, not just his own walk, right? That's just a guy who just does that because he's got a snowblower and his neighbors don't, right? Like, this is what men do. And then we have one day a year to celebrate their contribution and discuss their problems. And it gets shit on by entitled fucking first world, white, middle class, educated cunt feminists. Sorry, Tom, I don't know if you like that language. But
I love
really,
it. I love it.
like, honestly, they can lick my fucking butthole. They can lick my butthole, and then they can smile and say, "Thank you, ma'am. May I have another?"
Karen has no self-interested reason to suggest that people lick her butthole. None whatsoever.
None whatsoever. None whatsoever.
Well, isn't this why there's so much disgust and fear? Because if guys are making everything run and then suddenly they show weakness, doesn't that threaten this whole comfortable situation?
It really does. But here's the thing. Because men used to run everything. They used to do all of the same stuff, right? All of the same, building infrastructure and buildings and making life comfortable and safe and clearing away the fucking jungle and keeping away the wild animals and the assholes down the valley who rev the cavemen down the valley who rev their motorcycles at 2 o'clock in the morning and keep the baby awake, right? Like, this is what men have always done, right? And they always got respect for it, right? And that was what kept them doing it. They got respect for it. They got status for it. They got a special status in society. It was called manhood, and it was respected, right? And that is one of the reasons why they did it. But now, they get a special status in society, and it's called manhood, and it is defined as piece of shit men who don't see women as human beings.
Yep.
I was reading some kind of study about this, that the best way to compliment a man is to admire him. The best way to help him out is to admire him rather than showing sympathy. I'm not sure whether I entirely buy it, but that ties together with what you're saying.
Well, there was that one scene in the trailer for the Red Pill movie, where she was interviewing a man and he stood up and he said, "I don't want sympathy for any of this," and he walked out. Right? It is really, really difficult for a lot of men to accept sympathy, because there comes a point when you're a boy and your voice cracks, right? And these same stupid bitch feminists who are like, "Oh, boys are taught when they're, even from the time that they're babies, that, they're different from girls, and they're encouraged to play further away, and parents wait longer to comfort them, and they comfort them for less time, and they don't hold them as close, and blah, 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 blah." And it makes them grow up with no emotional intelligence, right? And I'm thinking to myself, okay, you stupid, stupid bitch, you've been talking over these three men who have been trying to express themselves, right, and talk about their problems and their experiences, and you've been telling them this whole fucking time, "Oh, you're wrong about that. You're totally wrong about your own experiences and your motivations and intentions and why you do the things you do and how you feel. You're completely wrong about it. No. I know what it is. It's misogyny and homophobia," right? That's what makes you do those things, right? Essentially, that same stupid feminist who wants us to raise our boys, coddle them like girls, treat them as if their feelings matter as much as girls, she will be the very first one, the moment he sprouts some peach fuzz on his chin and his voice cracks, to be like, "I drink your male tears. Yeah, whine some more, man baby."
No, that's one thing they will treat.
Fucking bait and switch. It's a bait and switch. And how are we helping boys, right? By raising them to think that their feelings are going to matter as much as girls' feelings matter, and then have that thing crash into them right at the time when all of their hormones are out of whack, when everything, they're having all of these new feelings that they don't know how to deal with, right? They're taking more risks, they're just feeling really agitated, and this is the time when the sympathy train is just, it derails, The compassion train has derailed. They will never get compassion like that ever again, right? And we wonder why so many boys commit suicide at adolescence.
Amen.
We wonder why this number has gone up since the days of frickin' Clint Eastwood and John Wayne.
And it's because they learn at adolescence that all of a sudden they're no longer qualified to receive human compassion.
Yeah, and they've
And the
been
other
trained
thing
to
that they learn, the other thing that they learn is that if they do receive human compassion, they can't receive compassion and admiration at the same time.
Yeah, no,
And
they can't.
that's devastating as well. It's one of the reasons why men can't talk about things that they need compassion for. Because as soon as they're seen as vulnerable, they're no longer seen as men.
Right.
The society has to develop, we have to be able to develop in our society the ability to acknowledge men's vulnerability without emasculating them. Because being vulnerable doesn't make you not a man. It doesn't make you not an adult. It doesn't make you not strong. It just makes you human. And it's something that, it's a handicap that all of society has, and a handicap that gets foisted off on men. And they then, when they buckle under it, they get blamed for it. Even to the point where I've seen feminists describe male suicide as an attack on women by guilt tripping them. Men can't even be the primary victims of their own deaths. And that's, that kind of takes me into what has happened in response to a day. Men asked for 1 day to talk about men's issues. 1 day to talk about male suicide and workplace deaths and boys in education, and just to have 1 day where those issues are in the forefront in the face of everyday feminism and everyday attacks on men as people and men as adults and men on a moral level and the validity of their existence. To have 1 day, and feminists responded by attacking that too. But it's about equality, right? You ask any third wave feminist. I'm going to go into reading this. Ask any third wave feminist, and you will hear that feminism is not about hating or blaming men, but about equality. And they'll tell you, they'll point out the dictionary definition in an attempt to deflect from criticism the movement faces. And how have they demonstrated that claim? Just take a look at their response to growing enthusiasm for International Men's Day. But first, a real brief explanation of International Women's Day. According to internationalwomensday.com, this socialist-created holiday began in 1911, when it was celebrated as a day of rallying for women's issues in Austria, Denmark, Switzerland, and Germany. And over time, it spread throughout the world. So the holiday is over 100 years old and a worldwide event. This, in addition to charities for women, scholarships for women, media focus on women's interests, and entire social science dedicated to the study of women's issues, and women's lobbying groups who have successfully agitated for gendered laws and special funding for women's healthcare initiatives. InternationalMen'sDay.co places the beginning of the November 19th holiday in 1992, with less pomp and circumstance and a more rocky start than the feminist holiday. It's now supported by a variety of individuals and groups in Australia, the Caribbean, North America, Asia, Europe, and Africa, including the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization, but not by feminists at large. International Men's Day was created to celebrate the positive aspects of male existence and bring attention to issues of discrimination and challenges faced by men. Its focus includes such issues as the needs of male intimate partner and sexual violence victims, the rise of male suicide, men's and boys' health initiatives, and the changing education system's increasing tendency to leave boys behind. The goal of discussion is entirely about men and boys, and an effort to bring some balance to gender issues discussion and resulting legal and social environments. Feminists have responded with ridicule and outrage, blocking efforts in the UK to get equal recognition for the holiday and its intended focus. Birmingham Member of Parliament Jess Phillips ridiculed the idea, then responded to criticism of her behavior by behaving as if addressing one men's issue alone would make up for her sexist display. Feminists at the University of York responded to a planned Men's Day celebration as if acknowledging that men also face discrimination and challenges constitutes an attack on women. These supposed champions for equality sent administrators a letter accompanied by a petition with 200 signatures demanding the university cancel the event because women's groups were not asked their opinion on it first. It seems that campus feminists believe men and boys need women's permission to address any of their own needs. Less than 24 hours after the cancellation was announced, one of the university's male students committed suicide. The university has not commented on the student's death, but a Change.org petition by Ruth Morris requesting the event be reinstated has gathered nearly 4,000 of the 5,000 signatures it needs. And a member of Parliament, Lucy Allen, has weighed in, promising a statement about the issue in today's debate, and true to her word, she spoke very eloquently, explaining what an opportunity the day is for gender relations, pointing out the wrongfulness of the male aggressor, female victim narrative. Equality, she pointed out, is always about having the same chances in life. And that is why, or is what today should be about. She mentioned one men's issue after another, describing their details and their impact on men and boys and their families and on society. On Twitter, third-wave feminists spent the day tweeting demonizing statements about rape, battery, and the very claims of patriarchal oppression Lucy Allen said in her statement should not be dumped on today's men. Well, it's not accurate to say that the second wave of feminism can be defined by its remarkable few enlightened. The gulf between it and the third wave is clear. Society could benefit from getting today's feminists back to their roots, if for no other reason than that doing so would put them in a position from which building human connection between the genders might be possible.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm actually. It was a female MP who read off that list in Parliament.
Yeah, it was a female MP who read off that list in Parliament. Her name is Lucy Allen.
Lucy Allen. She deserves a bouquet of flowers or something.
He deserves a Karen DeCrow Award.
We were very lucky to get that debate. It was only really the outcry at Jess Phillips that really seemed to make it happen.
Yeah.
And I guess it's hard to see it, but I guess getting them to climb down on at least the suicide issue is actually a fairly big victory. Getting them to acknowledge that that's genuinely a problem, though it's undeniable at 4 times the rate that women kill themselves.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, and it depends on the age, the age demographic. For young men between 15 and between adolescence and 25, it's much higher. And in the wake of a divorce, it's also much higher, up to something like 9 to 11 times higher, depending on where you go.
No. Well, the age thing is pretty understandable, though, because in between the point at which boys learn the difference between how society values them and how society values women, and the point at which men usually go through divorce, is a time period in which men consider themselves vital to their families, because they are, and they recognize the fact, especially if they are the breadwinner of the family. They have someone who will suffer terribly if they're gone, someone who depends on them, and they don't give up, even under circumstances where it would be completely understandable if they did, because they don't want something bad to happen to their families. They don't want their children to lose them. They don't want their wives to lose them. And so men live through things that women attempt suicide over during that time period of their lives because they have to. And then, of course, when you get beyond middle age, you start losing the men to early death from high-stress lives and high physical stress jobs and on-the-job death and military death and accidental death and being mugged and murdered and things like that. And so as you get up past the 70s, there's going to be more women who commit suicide because there's more women. More women survive that long. You get up past the 80s, a lot more women survive that, that long. And when you get into the 90s, it's very rare to find men.
Okay.
And from working in nursing homes, I can tell you that the majority of people who live in nursing homes are women, and many of them are widows.
Oh,
Alright.
yes.
Okay,
Yeah,
Karen,
no,
before you get started, I noticed that Tom was trying to speak. Okay, Tom, I've headed off the Karen train, so if you have anything to say.
Actually, I really enjoyed the Karen train. Sorry.
Okay.
No, I'm just happy
appreciate
with, and I think the theme has been really important. The Men's Day, the misandry in people not being able to appreciate that. It's just it's an amazing mess we're in.
Definitely an amazing mess. Like the amount of abuse that's being heaped at men on the day. And the funny thing is that feminists will say, well, every day is Men's Day.
Right.
No, actually, I think you'll find that in aristocratic societies, they had specific days where they celebrated their aristocracy. And with pageantry and pomp. And I think if we really lived in a patriarchy, we would find that multiple days would be devoted to the celebration of men. And
Agreed.
we don't.
Agreed.
But,
yeah. No, and you look at Mother's Day, you look at Valentine's Day, you look at the anniversary, right? And those are so typically sort of one-way street holidays. The Valentine's Day, he's buying her gifts and taking her out, and he has to arrange everything to go to a nice restaurant, take her out, and show her a good time, and all of that. And does she buy him a gift? Probably not. And does she make any of the arrangements? Probably not. Mother's Day, same thing, right? Father's Day, Mother's Day, is the highest volume of long distance calls in North America, right? The highest volume of long-distance calls in North America are made on Mother's Day. The highest volume of collect calls are made on Father's Day. That tells you something, doesn't it?
That's funny.
Well, it's funny, but it's true. And it is funny because it's true, but it's funny in a sad way.
Indeed.
It's like that kind of black melancholy humor, right? Because we appreciate Dad enough to call him, but not enough to spend the $5.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and definitely this outpouring of contempt towards men on International Men's Day is just, you know what I want to say to that? I'm not even going to dignify it with anger. Instead, I'm going to go and say something completely different. This is going to be like just now for something completely different. I want to say to all of the men who wrote in, and also Mallory, the woman who wrote in, I want to say, and in particular I want to say this to the men. Thank you for honoring us with your stories. Thank you for honoring us with your vulnerability. It's an honor to be respected enough by you to tell us these stories.
And trusted.
And trusted enough. That is an honor. And I am humbled that you did this, that you trust us enough, that you respect us enough to honor us with your vulnerability. And I just wanted to say there were many, many more testimonials that were sent in response to asking people to stand in solidarity with TD. And we are going to do something with them. We're probably going to publish them on our website, and I will be sending them to TD as well, so he can see how many people care about what he had to say and feel similarly. So don't think that these things will be, they'll go somewhere. They'll be go to their appropriate tubes, where they will be tubed to their appropriate ends. And
I want to. Oh, Tom, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I was just going to add on to what Allison said and just tell those men something that I really feel in the bottom of my heart is true, and that is men are good, and so are you. You know, find ways to help yourself understand that. Men are good.
You know, I think one of the biggest pieces of evidence for that is the fact that, like, we have been under. It was 1848. Feminists declared gender warfare. Right? They declared gender warfare with a document that smeared men as participating in a conscious or subconscious conspiracy to marginalize and subjugate women just for men's benefit.
Right.
Right? Women were unhappy with this. Women were upset with this. Women felt like they suffered under this. And what did men do? They gave women property rights within marriage. They gave women custody of the children. They gave women, because custody of the children would serve women's happiness, according to the Declaration of Sentiments, whereas the old arrangement did not serve women's happiness. They gave women the vote without the draft. They gave women pretty much every reform women feminists have agitated for. They endured a constant barrage of vilification and just attacks on men's character and on the notion of masculinity. A masculinity that has been defined by men for centuries as being protective of womanhood, not exploitative of womanhood. That a real man defends a woman against a male exploiter. He doesn't exploit a woman. That's the villain's role. And the real man is the one who avenges the woman.
Yep.
Right? That's how men have always defined masculinity in relation to their own women. And their own women attack them this way and have attacked them constantly for 150, 165 years. And it's just now that men are starting to say, you know what? This is kind of bullshit.
Really?
Fuck yourself, cunt.
Feeling unfairly maligned, right? I love you, honey, but I don't love you that much.
Really?
Right?
Yeah.
What does it say about how men feel about women? That they have been willing to put up with, not just put up with being maligned in this way, but bend over backwards, right? To try to appease these women who are doing it, to make them happy. They're saying men are doing this wrong. Oh, well, we better fix that. Oh, men are manspreading. Oh, well, we better pass a law. Oh, well, men are doing this wrong. Men are mansplaining. Well, we better write 10 articles in the fucking HuffPost about it from men who think that that's just wrong to do, right? Oh, we gotta do what it takes to make women happy. And yet somehow feminists are living in some kind of fantasy fucking world where all men hate and conspire against women. Where men are raised to hate women. By who? Oh, by their mothers. But, you know, we're just going to ignore that. Okay? Men are raised to hate women. The entire society hates women. Full stop. End of story. Right? Even though all of these men in power could give a fucking shit about male suicide. It took a public outrage to shame them into having a debate in the UK Parliament about male suicide and male issues. It took a fucking public outrage to actually get them to do it, right? He suggested it to Parliament. Parliament said take it to the backbench committee, and the backbench committee said, "Oh, yeah, go ask Parliament." Ah, yeah, you don't need that. You can debate that any day in Parliament. Just ask them. Well, Parliament sent me to you. It's the same fucking. There's nobody up there who cares.
And then the woman who ridiculed ridiculed male suicide had the nerve to damsel because people criticized her for it too vehemently.
Yes.
People said, "I hope you get raped, bitch." And then she was like, "Oh, my delicate feelings, but I could totally negotiate a trade deal with Putin." Like, what the fuck?
Yeah, but our feelings don't matter.
No, obviously
it's
not.
all right to ridicule male suicide, but you know it's not all right to say I hope you get raped.
Suicide's no biggie. Mean tweets. That's all that serious.
Yeah. Okay, well, we are at the wall here, folks. Because I know that Hannah has to get going, and I'd like to be able to end it without her having to leave in the middle. But I wanted to say thank you again to everybody who wrote in. All the men, your stories, like I said, you honor us with your vulnerability. And even
And
if
I'm
that
gonna
sounds cringy. What? Sorry, go ahead, Karen.
I just want to say I'm gonna have to have Tom on just a Google Hangout sometime because he needs to talk more.
Yeah.
Good.
Okay. Well, you mean like a fireside chat or something, eh?
Yeah, no, we're